Gage asks, what is your guys' opinion on the quote-unquote red pill movement? Do you think it is beneficial to society?
So the red pill movement...
That's a good question.
You know what's funny? Everyone co-ops. I gotta go now. Hello! This is a podcast. We're here. Ready. We were just discussing that several months ago you went on prep for no reason at all.
Yep.
You want to tell people what prep is?
Sure. So my friend is a swinger.
Yeah.
And he goes to sex parties, which sounds super fun, but I'm terrified of STDs.
Yeah.
And so the next day I was having lunch with my homosexual friend, and I was telling him about my friend, how cool it sounds, but how I can't do it. And he goes, why don't you just go on prep? I was like, I have no idea what prep is. Apparently it's this medicine that you take, and then you 99.99% cannot contract HIV.
This is insane. I have to double check, because you were telling me just a second ago that you can be exposed, whether you're an ER nurse or you have unprotected sex, and then if you find out immediately and take it very quickly within the window, you will not contract HIV.
My friend's fiance is a ER nurse or ER doctor, actually. And so if a homeless person comes in, you don't know anything about their blood work, you're trying to get a IV in them and they have an episode and you get stabbed, it's a non-issue, because you just you take this medicine for like a month and it guarantees that you, even if they were HIV positive and you did a blood-to-blood, you won't contract it.
I'm just thinking, so people who go on it are people who have been exposed to HIV.
So normally you're a homosexual man who's having unprotected sex with various people, you're an intravenous drug user, or you're a psycho who's terrified of STDs, even though you're a heterosexual white male using condoms. And I just was like, you know what? I'll double down. 99% effective plus 99.9% effective. What could go wrong? Turns out a very small percentage of the population has an allergic reaction to PrEP. So for about a week, I couldn't sleep because I was so itchy.
You didn't know why, right?
No, it took me a couple days to figure out. No one told you. No.
Because I remember you being like, I'm having a tough time sleeping, dude. I was so itchy last night.
Dude, all of my friends who are on it were like, dude, there's no side effects.
Yeah.
There's no side effects. It's a wonder drug.
Yeah.
And finally, after 3 days of insomnia, I forget, someone said it, and I gave it a Google. It's like, a very small percentage of people get extremely itchy on this medicine. It's like, fuck. And the worst part was, so I hadn't slept in days because I was so itchy. When you go off it, it still has to work its way through bloodstream. Yeah. So I stopped taking it, but it still took another, like that night, even without having taken it, I was just like, why did I do this to myself?
Dude, yeah, the same thing. I told you this, but I went on Propecia so I don't go bald, because my dad is super got the thing and I'm starting to get the receder. And I was on that for a week or whatever. And all of a sudden, I'd broken up with my ex for about 3 months. And then one night I'm up till 5 a.m. Yeah. And I'm going, I miss her. I need her. I love her. And then the next night I'm up again and it's 5 a.m. I went to bed, by the way, at 10 p.m. It's 7 hours of laying there going, I got to call her. And it's been 3 months. I haven't wanted to.
Yeah. And you weren't like that the week prior.
No. And at one point I'm up so late and I go, oh my gosh, when I wake up in the morning, like I'm going to have to remember to take this, because it wasn't a habit yet of taking this.
And you're afraid that the sleep deprivation would lead to hair loss?
And I was going, oh my gosh, because normally I do it at whatever, 10 or 11 in the morning when I wake up. I'm not going to wake up at 10 or 11, so I'm going to have to remember to take this. I go, wait a second. I started taking essentially something that messes with your hormones about 6 days ago.
And about 5 days ago, I started having horrific
anxiety. Which I was attaching to this breakup.
Yeah. I
was like, let's just see if I don't take it tomorrow morning. And no joke, by 1 p.m. the next day, I was completely fine.
Your brain just went,
I was completely fine. Well, and then I remember feeling, because we don't have a period, so our hormonal profile is fairly level. And I just had such empathy for all the women that I've dated who have had massive fluctuations of estrogen or whatever throughout their cycle and have gone crazy. And I go, just deal with it. You know what I mean? Just be logical about it. Because in that moment, there was no... I made a promise to myself. I said, if this happens for another 7 days, I don't care. We're getting back together. Everything I said about...
I'll do anything to end this.
Everything I said about breaking up is wrong.
What does Propecia do? It just shoots your estrogen up?
No. I think this is going to be the most bro science you've ever heard.
Okay.
So essentially, the reason that men go bald and women don't is because men have chemicals that make them go bald. And I think when testosterone or ditestosterone breaks down, it breaks down into this thing that like bonds to your hair follicles and makes them weak. So being a man and then getting older, which is your male chemicals start to break down in certain ways, leads to hair loss. And so what it does is it like binds to those things so they don't break down as much, or it reduces the amount. It just does affect your hormone profile. You can look it up if you're that interested. But this is why they say the other effect is that it'll affect your libido. It affects the things that
positively or negatively.
I think negatively.
Okay.
I didn't notice.
It'd be an amazing drug if it did both.
Yeah.
Right? You're gonna keep your hair in a boners all the time. No wonder Hims is $1 billion company.
And so it was. It was the hardest night of my life.
Nice.
And I looked up the chemical thing. I knew it for a day, and I went, "This is not worth it."
There you go.
Yeah.
Don't do pharmaceuticals.
So lots of stuff this week, though.
Oh, good.
That is not prep related. Do we want to jump right into this whole China thing? Do we?
Sure. I had a China thing.
There's
too,
so much, man.
I was gonna save it because we're doing a lot of China, but let's do it.
Well, I'm interested in the people. Again, I'm not really interested in the geopolitics. But so if you're not familiar, China is a country.
Wow, you're really taking that podcast comment to heart. Someone commented and said we jump in halfway through, assuming everyone had seen the past episodes.
Yeah. So I'll catch you up. So China,
it's a republic, actually. I think
China's out there. They've got Hong Kong, which they own but don't own because of colonialism. The British took it, and they're due to get it back, I think, in
26 years.
Whatever. So they're now moving in increasing ways to extradite people back to mainland China, which Hong Kong certain protesters are fighting. Yeah. And the internet is very much the internet. I say the internet. Reddit, which is my gateway to the internet, is very pro Hong Kong revolution. Mm-hmm. So what happens is then these people go on Hearthstone, which is a game owned by Blizzard, and the guy wins a tournament, and he says, "Free Hong Kong, revolution of our times," as he wins in the winner's podium. Blizzard reacts, takes away his prize money, and bans him for 12 months. Mm-hmm. Then the internet reacts, and so the update is that Blizzard then commuted his sentence to 6 months. Do you see this?
No.
And said he would get his prize money.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And of course, there's all this stuff with the NBA we talked about in the last past. I won't waste too much time.
Well, can I hop in with the NBA?
Sure.
I don't think you heard this. There's a Chinese streaming company that had said they were not going to broadcast preseason NBA games, potentially not NBA games. Apparently, a lot of Chinese people canceled said streaming company.
Really?
Because they are already streaming. Yes. They are already streaming NBA games, which I thought was fascinating because the dialogue had been China's this evil, faceless empire run by dictatorship, and the U.S. is capitalist, and so the capitalists are bending over backwards for China censorship.
Yeah.
Turns out there's no good or evil. Everybody's profit-driven.
Yeah.
And so the company needs to be on good terms with the Chinese government. That's the thing. If you're a Chinese company, you can't have an adversarial relationship with them.
Sure.
But very quickly, also needs to be a profit-driven organization. And so they're already streaming preseason NBA games.
Are they really?
All of this fuss, nothing really happened from Daryl Morey's tweet, except for that there was a uproar.
Well, I think he
didn't get fired, and they're streaming games.
Are the Rockets still existing in China?
I don't know, but I think the point is
James Harden
what
jerseys?
what money dictates to occur is what will likely occur.
And so the government is obviously a huge spender of money, but this was my other point is people are super mad at Blizzard for kowtowing to China, and then they've listed all these companies that delisted, this is over the last several years, Taiwan as a country, all these airlines that delisted Taiwan as a country in order to appease the Chinese government. And they're furious, and they think there's this group of greedy people that exist only in these corporations, and that then there's them and the rest of the world. And what I see is a bunch of people who are profit driven, who do not who only care about getting cheap goods and not spending too much money.
China's whole economic strength comes from the fact that other countries buy things that were made in China because they have cheap labor. Questionably ethical cheap labor.
Well, I mean, imagine if Apple released a new iPhone and they said, look, here's the deal. You can get the Foxconn iPhone with Chinese labor, which is not, you can not like what happens there for $1,000. Or we're going to show you transparently people paid in another country that isn't, we're going to pay them more money. We're going to make sure they're good. The government that supports freedom of speech is going to be $2,000. How many units is that iPhone going to sell?
I have a question. Is it a unique color that only exists if it's $2,000?
That's a great that's a good marketing mind.
Because if it's a different color, it will sell really, really well. If they look identically, It won't sell at all.
If you could virtue signal based on it, that's a great point.
It might sell more.
So, hopefully, maybe there's something good that can come of virtue signaling, which is this kind of stuff. But the point being, my hypothesis is, all things being equal, people will not spend more money for the same product in order to pay for ethical sourcing.
Well, let's go one greater, and I challenge us and all our viewers in the world to do this. How many people that are upset with China and their treatment of Hong Kong and are upset with the NBA for being profit-driven and censoring themselves went out and threw out all their made-in-China products or swore to never buy a made-in-China product again? Because if you're going to be mad at the NBA for wanting China's dollars, but you aren't willing to take a financial hit to stop giving China your dollars, then we're all hypocrites because we're all doing the same thing the NBA is doing, which is being profit-driven.
Sure, and China isn't a monolith. I wouldn't even suggest that would be a wise way to go about protesting, but like, oh, this is made in China. It's bad. But the point, I think...
that's where their economic power comes from.
The deeper point you're making is be concerned with where things come from, right? To pay for a process of whatever, sourcing food, sourcing items that is ethical and that you are proud to support.
Yeah. That's actually not even my point is, if you are really, really upset with someone for letting China bully them economically while supporting China's economy, I would look internally before you get mad at other people.
Sure. And I agree 100%. And I was trying to think, okay, so maybe people aren't going to do that. But I think there's analogs in normal life for normal people, whether or not they have the time to source things. So basically what we're saying is the NBA Blizzard bent over backwards for somebody who has control of their paycheck. Mm-hmm. Not even total control of their paycheck, some control over
control
their
like 10%
paycheck.
of their paycheck.
And so if that's upsetting to you, and if you don't like that, and I take this to heart myself, and I really do want to apply this, where is that same principle playing out in your life? Meaning, have you ever watched your boss treat someone in your workplace really badly? And because you weren't the man who was being treated, you sat there and shut up and didn't say anything, rather than risk your paycheck to speak the truth and stand up for the oppressed in this case. And I think until we live in a world where I and you and the average person is willing to put their very limited financial dollars on the line in order to do that, you cannot expect Blizzard, which is just people, to do the same thing, or the NBA to do the same thing.
Yeah, it's just an organization made up of people like us, just like you.
Who don't want to get fired, who have other people who care about the profit motive. And it really does... We often like to say that these governments have power, and I don't deny that. There is some... China's capable of crazy things. A few people in a room can move the world. But the world is capitalist, and it responds to demand, mass demand. So how do you change the world is, I think you go to not the demand side. Like, what are we demanding from China in terms of their products? Where are we putting power in their hands? We don't, we talk about ethically eating food. Like, maybe if people didn't want to eat as much meat or demanded, they said, we want a meat alternative that tastes great and we're willing to pay twice as much money for it. Within 3 years, we'd have some really good tasting soy product that was like just as good as a burger. So I've been thinking about that and how we need to just keep that in mind for our business and our life.
I don't think, just to be clear, I don't think anyone has to do anything in the sense that you don't have to stop buying things from companies that are in China. I would just suggest, when you find yourself upset with a government or a corporation, look to your own behavior and see if you're doing something that mirrors it. Because I think that will give you empathy for the NBA. Because the NBA doesn't want to lose $10 billion of revenue a year or whatever. And most people don't want to spend an extra $10 on a shirt. And so they won't get one made in America.
Yeah.
And I think that if that resonates, then I think it'll give you empathy for what's happening.
Sure. And let me address one rebuttal that I think people might have, which is, well, the NBA is rich. The NBA is talking about billions. I don't have that much money.
Well, the NBA is not a human. Those billions are strewn between.
And if you're listening to our podcast, this isn't true of every one of you, but most of you are in the 99.99th percentile of well-off humans that have ever walked the face of the planet Earth. And you're just comparing yourself to the 99.999th biggest corporation. So, like, you have more to give than anyone has ever had before you. And if you're unwilling to, because the NBA has more, that does not protect you from your own principle applying to you.
And almost everyone can have that logic, right? James Harden can go, listen, I know I make $40 million a year, but the owner is the one that's making billions. And the owner can go, I'm not Steve Ballmer. I don't have 40 billion. Everybody can always look to the right side of the bell curve if they want to justify inaction.
Yeah. So this comes back to something we always talk about, which is the world is, in most cases, your psychology multiplied by 7.5 billion people, and per person multiplied by the amount of power that particular individual has.
Yeah, with a couple Ted Bundys mixed in.
With a couple Ted Bundys mixed in. Exactly.
There's a slightly different psychology.
I'm glad you said that, because I do think that's important to note. There are some aberrant psychologies that are in there, but for the most part, it's within a spectrum of pretty close.
It's close to us.
To
by us, I mean all of us.
Yeah. So that's China. That's all that I wanted to say about that. F transition.
Nice.
We got our first comment on the podcast, which is where someone
wrote the word first.
Yeah, I was like,
nice.
We did it.
Yes.
Look, Mom, we made it. I didn't realize there was a rush, but
there is.
Now there is.
I love this.
It's a cold rush.
I love you guys.
And we hit 10,000 subscribers.
Yep. And I love every single one of you more than my own family.
I'm capable.
Actually, my mom subscribed, I think.
Yeah.
So I love her.
So she's in that group as well of people you love. Yeah. So we hit 10,000, and it was, I think, in massive part because we talked about it on our main channel, which we'll continue to do. But I will say, and we are interested in doing this for longer, and I think it has potential. I'm not certain. Quite frankly, every minute that I spend on this is certainly not the best from a financial perspective, but arguably also not the best from an impacting the world in a positive way perspective. And I'd like to tip that balance toward the podcast because I like that we get to talk about these sorts of things. I think they're important, but the reach that we have is so limited compared to Charisma on Command, the main channel, doesn't always make a ton of sense. So if you are a fan, if you like this, we do want to continue to do it. And what I would ask for is leave us a review on the Apple podcast thing. We just discussed that that's sort of an indicator of credibility, not just the ratings, but the number of ratings. When you're like, oh, people listen to this. This isn't this guy, his mom, his dad, which probably makes up 10% of our reviews right now. Well, actually, I'm sure it doesn't. I'm sure my mom hasn't reviewed the podcast. I'll have her do that. 1 star doesn't call home enough.
Isn't coming home for Thanksgiving. 1 star.
So if you're a fan, that would be super helpful, and subscribing to the channel. We are in growth mode, I think, for this. We want this. We want this to happen. So we appreciate you guys listening. That's what I want to say about that. I've got some other stuff if you want to, but before I move too far off politics, do you?
No. I got nothing else with politics.
So there's a lot about China that we touched on, and I'll do this. PewDiePie, New York Times article. I'm sure you didn't see it.
No.
Because I wouldn't have seen it unless my mom sends it to me. And I looked at it, and it's fascinating, man. My thesis with the news, I will tell you, is that the story isn't the story. The adjectives used are the story, which is to say when there's a bombing or whatever, that's not the story. The story is whether they describe the people who did the bombing as revolutionaries or terrorists. That is the story. The power of all media to influence you is from the frame of the story. Sure. It's not from there were 16 rockets as opposed to 14. So I'll read you some of the examples. This is with regards to when PewDiePie made the Wall Street Journal with that, what do you say, Death to Jews. He had the Fiverr guy hold up the Death to Jews thing.
They're still talking about that.
Well, they're explaining it to people who don't know but have heard that PewDiePie is a right-wing extremist. And so here's what it is.
What was the title of the article?
I forget. I'll have to look. That's a great question. Honestly, that's probably the most important thing. But the headline is pretty special. But I'll read this to you. So, and partly it's because Schellberg, I think that's how you say his name, responded to being called out for those jokes, and they're describing why he got flack, and other offensive statements the way a reactionary might, by mocking his critics, casting himself as the victim of a media smear campaign, and refusing to back down. So this thing says that reactionaries respond to criticism by saying that it's not true, but also people who are falsely accused respond to that by saying it's a media smear campaign. People who are, I think in his case, I followed it pretty closely, were completely taken out of context where they go, this guy is a Nazi. And I feel like they lost the thread of what a Nazi is, did, or meant when there were Nazis in Germany. And perhaps, even some who still exist today.
Hitler would rank him as an F Nazi.
They weren't, yes. Yes. Willingness to crack jokes wouldn't have cut it. Yeah.
My German accent is
so
terrible.
that's one. And then here's one where he responds to it. He says, a few days later, Schellberg posted an angry defensive video in which he vacillated between self-deprecation and grandiosity, accusing the Journal of punching down at a rookie comedian, seconds before saying things like, old school media does not like internet personalities because they're scared of us. He recast the Journal's article as a conspiracy, implying that the jealous, dishonest mainstream media had ginned up fake controversy in order to take him and YouTube down a peg. Now, keywords here, defensive. When someone's defensive, it's because they did something wrong, right? You would never describe someone who is wrongfully accused as defensive. That's what somebody is when they're caught cheating. Another word, recast. Like he took it and changed what the Journal's article was. That wasn't what the Journal's article was. So they've said in one word, that's not true.
Yeah.
That's all they had to say. And then as a conspiracy. Now, who has conspiracies? Conspiracies aren't true by the definition.
Crazy people.
It's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
And so the whole article was, I mean, Felix, you could tell, he asked for this interview, and I think to a degree kissed the ring and gave them an interview and said, and for that they were willing to bless his shoulders and touch his. This is my perspective on it, obviously.
He said, New York Times, I want to do an interview with you?
Yes, after this, after there was, so the sub to PewDiePie thing, this is what started it. One of the guys who shot up Christchurch said sub to PewDiePie at the end of it. And he felt terrible about that and shut down the sub to PewDiePie meme. Effectively, I was shocked at how quickly he actually was able to go, don't do sub to PewDiePie anymore. And then he asked for an article because he didn't want this to be the case. And I read it, and it's absolves him, but also not without throwing these things in, which is to say, if I were writing the article, it would read my bias, which is my bias, that the Wall Street Journal took him out of context in order to gin up fake controversy. And the words that I chose would reflect that bias.
Well, you do believe that the old media is scared of the new media.
I do believe that the old media.
The presidential debates
Yeah.
got as many views as Joe Rogan when he had Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
And PewDiePie gets more views than most television shows. So
how's old media been doing since new media came around?
Yeah.
How's that paywall working out for you, New York Times? You guys making as much money these days? How's your circulation? Like, the New York Times might be one of the few that's hanging on, but old media has been destroyed.
Sure.
To say that they're not afraid of new media is to say that they lack a survival instinct. I
think if you're them, you want to appear above it, right?
Of course. All they
we're
have,
not scared of new media.
All they have is the veneer of authority.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the last one that I'll just read you really quickly. When Schellberg is accused of being far right, he doesn't respond by protesting he's a classical liberal or a heterodox stoic or whatever YouTube reactionaries are calling themselves these days, which, again, is what he is. Instead, he insists that he's not interested in politics at all. It's a clever strategic position for a guy whose audience straddles the partisan divide. And again, saying that he's not interested in politics is now a strategic position as opposed to an honest representation of his feelings. Like, there's no... And again, they have a bias, as do I. And I don't forbid them their bias. I think it's important that we acknowledge that there is no objective news out there. There's just people sharing their biases and then revealing their biases as best they can.
I'm sensing that you hate the New York Times.
I'm very anti. And you know what? It's not the New York Times. It's their coverage of YouTube, which is the one thing that I feel close enough to have an opinion on. So when we talk about Hong Kong, I'm not close enough to say what's happening on the ground, but I do feel fairly close to YouTube. I probably watch more PewDiePie than all of the people who have written about him combined.
You did 3 breakdowns on it, so it's kind of your job.
Yeah, and I've since watched, anyways, I read that and was disappointed, but again had to step back and say, don't get angry. The whole point is to gin up a feeling in the reader.
I think that's a good lesson.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a lesson that I don't have as a habit, and I think a lot of people don't, is when you're reading something to look, what is the agenda here? Like, how was this written?
Yes.
Right?
I think the news is so fun to read when you assume that the story isn't the story. And you ask yourself, and you can do this with my videos too. This isn't exclusive to the New York Times. This is for human psychology. What does the author want me to think is such an illuminating question. And it always comes back to buy me, read me, pay attention to me. So if you go to our videos, I mean, there's obviously a layer of it which is teaching people, and I try to focus on that layer. But certainly what I want you to think is that I am an expert.
And charisma is important.
And charisma is important.
And the person we're covering is charismatic.
And exactly. There's a lot of implicit things that are in any video that I do by virtue of my psychology, my incentive structure, all of my motives, which must come through in anything that I create. And I try to straddle a line of saying, okay, I don't want to cite a study that is going to pretend that I've done a study that I haven't done, but certainly I'm portraying myself as an expert. And people often ask, how did you learn all this stuff? And the truth is, I picked it up and learned it and make it up throughout my life, and then I take it out and practice it. And things that I said 3 years ago, that was a unnuanced understanding of whatever topic. I'm constantly still learning. So I am not. If I am an expert, which I do think there's argument that I am, it is not that I am the authority, period, on charisma. It's that I've just spent a lot of time thinking about it. So it's fun to look at videos and news and all that kind of stuff with the author's agenda in mind. You learn a lot about people and psychology and how the world works. That was my thought on that. I don't know if you have any reaction.
No, it was a good rant.
It was a rant. It was a rant. It
was a good rant.
What else do we have? Any news, Angel?
You guys want some current events?
I think so. Let's do it.
I've got a couple things here. Martin Scorsese did an interview recently where he said that he doesn't feel like Marvel movies are cinema. He said he compared them to theme parks, saying that it isn't cinema of human beings trying to convey emotional or psychological experiences to other human beings, which is why he doesn't feel like it's true cinema. And of course, Marvel stars and collaborators aren't happy about it, but I just wanted to see if you guys agree with that.
No, I cry during every Marvel movie. I'm deeply touched.
Well, I always think
it's myth.
I always think that
it's modern day myth.
Definitions are so fun. That's why I asked, you know, can you, before I can say if I believe in a moral code, can you define moral code? Because he says it's not cinema, but I'm pretty sure cinema is the science or art of motion picture photography. So, Scorsese, I question your definition of cinema.
Yeah. What he's saying is I don't like this.
I know what he's saying. What he's saying is I'm going to denigrate it and insult it because I don't like it. And what I'm saying is you picked a weird word because it's definitely cinema.
Sure.
I think this goes back to the New York Times thing. It goes back to the conversation we just had, which is people are trying to use their language to convince you to believe what they believe, right? And so I always just like to go, well, let's look at that sentence. Is it cinema?
And to universalize a personal opinion.
It sure is. If you look at cinema as...
I don't like Marvel movies is what he meant to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally cool.
But he wanted to make it so that other people... And he's Martin Scorsese. What he says carries weight in movies.
Yeah.
He wants to convince the populace to stop being so fussed.
I don't even... if he's trying to convince the populace, that would be a silly aim.
But it's a... I mean, they're obviously cinema. You could say they're not good cinema. You could say they're not...
We debate this again. There's been a very philosophy heavy day, but we talk about what is art, what qualifies as art. When Duchamp puts up a urinal in a museum, is that art? He didn't have to make that. When somebody scribbles on a piece of paper or does one red dot on a thing and it's in the MoMA, and you go, how is this art? And your instinct is, no, art is things that follows X, Y, Z, A, B categories, and then you dig into it philosophically. You go, anything that moves anyone in any way is artistic in that way.
You said you had an almost ayahuasca-esque high during Endgame, right?
Yeah. And that's art.
And the other thing I would say is, I'm going to counter you. I would actually argue it's the most popular cinema of our time.
Yeah.
So not only is it cinema, it's the most beloved, most popular cinema.
Sure.
And that hurts as a cinema maker who's trying to make something that's not Marvel, but that is what the box office numbers seem to show.
And I think that he might be missing the mythological aspect of these things. I mean, people have talked about how superheroes are modern day mythology, and we'll see over time. Maybe these will disappear in 5 years. I don't think they will. I think I'm going to show these to my kids.
Well, they've already been around for decades. They're based on stories that were written in the 60s and 70s.
And Martin Scorsese's made great movies, but they do not have the staying power of Iron Man.
I'm going to hard tangent you, actually. What's funny, what does he define cinema as?
He doesn't define it.
He doesn't define it in
he
that
just
interview.
says that he says that moves people, right?
He said, it isn't the cinema of human beings trying to convey emotional or psychological experiences to another human being.
People cry in these movies. People feel overwhelming joy in these movies.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that that's his lens. You know, we all have our bias. Mine's not better or worse, but it's interesting that that's what he thinks of Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Because it's just not what the evidence shows about Marvel movies.
Yeah.
People get very upset. They
Yeah.
get very joyous. They are definitely having emotional moments because of this cinema.
It might have been a flippant comment that he just was like, is in an interview they asked him. He's like, I don't think it's in. And then he's like, whoa, guys.
Yeah.
I was just some words that I said.
I don't believe that.
I was pretty sleepy.
I'll do a quick tangent on Marvel and then we'll go on. Did you know Marvel was insanely progressive in the early 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s?
No.
Captain Marvel. So I went to the Marvel Museum with my parents because it's in Philly when I was home last. And Captain America was used to get kids to take cardboard boxes and disassemble them and help the military get boxes to ship guns over to.
Is that progressive?
Sorry, it's just very politically inclined. And then
Superman fought Nazis, right?
Captain America fought Nazis.
I think Superman did too.
Maybe. And then they had early interracial couples, early gay characters, early. They took some heat for trying to be on the, hey, it's okay, and we're going to put this in front of kids that it's okay. I thought it was really interesting. I had no idea.
I don't know a lot about the history. I just watched the movies.
Yeah. I just thought it was cool.
What else we got?
Ellen DeGeneres is in a little bit of hot water right now.
George Bush?
Yeah, because she defended her friendship with George Bush in her talk show, saying that just because people have different opinions and beliefs doesn't mean that they can't be friends, that we should treat everybody kindly no matter what. But people argue with her that it isn't just a matter of opinions, but that he's actively taken steps to destroy people's lives, which makes it a little different.
I do think that that is a fair point. If you believe that George Bush, I mean, listen, if Ellen were sitting next to a serial killer, taking a photo, going, we're just different, we believe different things about human life, we'd all agree. Now, if you believe that George Bush's decisions knowingly started a war that killed more people than, if you believe this, I'm not saying that I do, that killed more people than any serial killer, in fact, all the serial killers in all of history, innocents, I understand that perspective.
Well, is that what people are upset about? Is it the wars?
Yeah, and
presumably. I think it's that he started 2 wars.
Primarily, it's that people have been calling him a war criminal.
Got it. Okay.
I do think that it is strange to, on one hand, insist that the president of the United States has massive powers, doing terrible things, is messing up the world, and on the other hand to say we just have political differences. Either this has real world consequences, no dissimilar to me hitting someone, like presumably if George Bush had punched Ellen's friends in the face, she would not sit with him. But if at a distance he makes decisions that to her kill needlessly thousands of people, it's strange to be friends and call that. Now, maybe that's not how Ellen feels. Maybe she just thinks that
the wars were justified.
Or maybe she that the wars were justified. Maybe she thinks that she disagreed with his stance on gay people and he's since changed his mind about that. And those are chasms which I think can be crossed. But killing of innocents seems to be one that you wouldn't hang out with someone over. If that was your belief. So I do understand. I don't think people are crazy for saying you can't.
You better not kill any innocents, dude. It's on camera.
Yeah.
Your hypocrisy is going to come back to bite you.
It's going to bite me. It's going to bite me.
Don't kill any innocents.
Yeah. And of course, there's, and now that I think about it, we all make decisions that kill innocents. We not do things, right? We don't donate. We don't get involved. We do. George Bush had just higher scale decisions. So I can also see that perspective of, he could not go to war, and he could potentially let, in his opinion, Americans die, or he could go to war. He could, I suppose, what matters when you're assessing a friendship is there blood on their hands, because in a weird way, there's blood on all of our hands for all the things that we don't do. It's how do you feel about their motives and thought process and intentions when they killed the innocents.
Yeah.
or failed.
I mean,
to save
I think
them.
that's the question no one knows, right? That's
Yeah.
the big question: is what did he think about the weapons of mass destruction?
Yeah.
What did he actually think?
Yeah.
Who did he actually think was responsible for 9/11?
Yeah.
Why did we actually enter those wars? Truly, no one knows. Maybe
Yeah.
him and Dick Cheney know.
Yeah.
And I think if it's Halliburton motivated, you're allowed to have a certain opinion.
Yeah.
And if it's some sort of math about human life on both sides,
Yeah.
then you can have a different opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know him.
I
But
can
that
read
would
his mind.
certainly that would be the number one thing that changed your opinion of George Bush, right? Would
Yeah.
be how did we end up in those wars?
Yeah.
And whatever you think the answer is going to color your
Opinion
view
of
of
the
him
guy.
aggressively.
Sure.
So
Anything else?
The last thing I have is that a marketing company based in Texas called Kick-Ass Masterminds, they posted a photo of an applicant in a bikini with a caption warning future applicants not to post such pictures because they come off as unprofessional. The applicant, Emily Cloud, tweeted that she was objectified by this company and asked them to take it down, and for a while they refused. There was a lot of backlash online, but eventually the CEO had to come out and apologize and deleted the post and said it was a lapse of judgment and that her entire company is now suffering because of her decision. But I thought that was kind of funny that a company with the word kick-ass in their official name has anything to say about what is or isn't professional. Also, they have in their past on their company profile posted pictures of people in bikinis as part of their marketing. Yeah. So it's a little bit hypocritical, and it makes sense that the internet was outraged about this one because it's bizarre. And
Angel went deep on this one. This one hit him in the feels.
Because I was kind of annoyed while doing this one because it's just, I don't know where these people get off thinking they can judge who isn't. And then why would you post somebody's picture publicly and say this person applied to our company? Don't do it. I don't know. That bothered me.
Yeah.
Well, very important detail. Is the photo something they found on her Instagram? Or in her resume, did she include a 8x11 photo of her? No, they found it on Instagram. Dude,
what?
I'm joking.
I believe that she followed their account after she had got an interview, and I think that's how
they just stalked her Instagram.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she just handed in a resume.
Oh, I was understanding that she sent in this oh, God.
No,
that's why I asked.
She tracked her down?
She was a regular applicant who interviewed, and they were interested in her.
And then they wouldn't take it. Well, this makes no sense anymore.
It's like if I applied for a job, and they're like, in 2013, you went to EDC shirtless.
And then you're like, could you not have my thing? And they just kept it on there?
Yeah.
That's like the least kick-ass marketing I've ever heard of.
You're like, hey,
kick-ass mastermind.
I get that I don't get the job, but could you maybe take my shirtless photo off of your Instagram page now? Yeah. And they're like, no, it's a lesson to others.
Yeah, that is beyond...
you don't want to work there. Good news. You dodged a bullet.
Yeah. That's a pretty bad lapse of judgment. Just it's so simple. It's like, why stick your neck out to? I don't understand this on Twitter or on this or that. Like, why be a dick to strangers?
Well, dude, this is actually something I think that it has tipped. But I remember when I was applying for my first job, 2009, I think it was. We had to.
Did we talk about our applicant? I'm sorry to interrupt, but remember our applicant? You got an email.
Oh, no, I don't think we've talked about this.
But we're not going to put this person on. I was going to say their name.
You got to say
this.
What was it? They shared a document.
They shared a doc with you.
And normally if I share a Google Doc with you, it says, from Ben Altman.
Yeah.
Google just sends that.
Yeah.
What was theirs? I forget.
I remember. You don't remember?
No.
You got it. So Ben opens his email, and it's from a woman who, because we know, it says because her name is in the title of the document for the script writer that we've been trying to work with and train. And it says, Ass Bandit wants to share a document.
That's right. That's right. I opened my work email. That's what it was. And it says, Ass Bandit has shared a document with you. And then it says, script by, and then the woman's name. And I went, all right. And I shot a reply. I was like, hey, thanks for this. I'm going to share it with Charlie. By the way, you might want to change whatever shows up in your... And I forwarded it to her. So what she got was forward.
Yeah.
Ass Bandit has shared, and then... her own script, which is great.
It's hilarious.
She never responded to me, but she did continue in the process.
She
just didn't write me back.
Yeah.
Probably a little embarrassed.
And didn't make our website or our Instagram, but
it did make our pod. Yeah.
You're an aimless story, whoever you are.
I love it.
I thought it was funny.
What I was going to say is when I was applying for jobs 2009, I did scrape my Facebook aggressively. Mm-hmm. All the underage drinking photos had to go because people were saying they're going to judge you on your Facebook because the bosses were in their 40s and 50s, had never had a Facebook.
Yeah.
And even though they drank underage, they had the thought process, it's irresponsible of you to allow yourself to be photographed.
And how could you be so stupid?
How could you be so dumb?
Put this publicly.
Put this publicly. Not because they didn't have phones everywhere they went that had cameras in them. And I think we've tipped to the point where even the people hiring in mid-level understand when you see a picture of a 19-year-old, the applicant's 22. At age 19, they did a beer bong.
Yeah.
I think we've hit the point where you got to go, yeah, no, duh.
Yeah.
Am I going to not hire this person because 3 years ago when they were 19, someone else photographed them doing a beer bong?
Yeah.
We all did it. I did it.
We were going to hire Ass Bandit.
Yeah.
If they wrote a good enough script.
No, and I'm saying I think we've tipped. I think we've kind of tipped to the point where it's like, you know what? Unless it's really crazy, yes.
Yeah.
You drank illegally. You're in a bathing suit.
Yeah.
I feel like most companies are just, this is pretty normal behavior.
For sure. Yeah, everybody, 19-year-olds are are crazy.
Well, this article,
They're all drinking and doing drugs.
This article resonated with me too because my digital past is always something that worries me.
Yeah.
Not because I've done anything wrong. I've got a pretty vanilla past in terms of drinking and drugs and everything like that. But there's a lot of very embarrassing things, and so
that's why this got better research than the Hong Kong protest.
Oh, it's the longest one on this list. Let's just say I'm glad you guys didn't look too deeply into me before hiring. Again, nothing wrong, just embarrassing.
Didn't look at all.
Yeah, that's. I am so not interested in anyone who works for me social media. I could not care less.
Didn't even check your criminal background. Hope you're not a criminal.
I'm not a criminal, but I used to be a performer, so there's a lot of bizarre costumes and outfits that.
Yeah.
Honestly, even if you were a criminal, as long as you're not a current criminal.
It was can you do the job?
Yeah.
It was the question. And we're realizing as we hire, are you honest? That's foundational. Now, we have not tested you yet, Angel.
I left my wallet around the other day. I went, my wallet's missing.
There's booby
and then
traps
I found it.
all over. All over.
Nice.
Well, now that I know you guys, you could see my stuff. I just didn't want you to see it before.
But anyways, let's
do some fan stuff, right?
Yeah, we've had a long cast today.
Some viewer questions. Someone wrote in that they don't like the term fan.
That's okay.
Yeah, I didn't think it was I thought it was a good thing. They're like, I'm not a fan, I'm a viewer. I was like, okay.
Or a listener.
Yeah, I don't know.
A supporter.
It's just meant to be it's meant to be a nice thing.
Whatever you want to be.
Supporter questions.
Dude, you're just a person who just happens to hear these words at this moment. That's who you are.
You're not even a person. You're a collection of atoms.
We got no claim
put
on
together
you.
by.
What else? What is the collections of atoms question?
Not as many questions this week, so I encourage people to make sure to ask questions in the YouTube comments, so I have a lot to pick from.
Yeah.
But we did get a couple.
Because he likes to ignore some of them. That's what he said. He wants to be able to not have some of your questions.
We want the good ones. But we got a couple this week. So this one's very simple. But Tuan asks, how do I stop being a people pleaser? What is your take on people pleasing in general?
Didn't we do a video on this?
Yeah, there's a video how to stop people pleasing.
Yeah. Find the video how to stop people pleasing.
Yeah,
that's my advice. It was the best advice that I came up with when I was thinking about this for a week straight.
Yeah. I would. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I want to say to you because when you ask a question on a podcast, you get a little personalized answer. Watch that video for sure. And I don't know that I say this in the video, but I think you're going to have to serve some master. Who are you pleasing? You know what I mean? And if you don't get connected with the things that please you internally, then you'll find a way to please other people. So in any given moment, I found it really helpful to be like, how much am I enjoying what I'm doing right now? Like scale of 1 to 10. Like is this a 1, a 6, a 7, an 8, a 9, a 10? And you'll start to see that there's things in your life that are 1s and things that are 9. And so when you start pleasing yourself by sounds suggestive.
I did it yesterday. The exercise, bros.
The exercise.
The mental exercise.
It was a 9 for those of you who are curious.
Yeah.
When you start to do that, you can be a self-pleaser.
Question for you. Do you still do it? Because I know you were very, very good at doing it when you were newly out of the breakup, trying to figure out what makes you happy, dating a lot. Do you still do it, or have you fallen into new patterns that you don't?
Both. I do it, and I do it less frequently. Yeah. So, but I still have moments where I'm going, how much am I enjoying this moment? It's like, wow, less than my behavior would lead you to believe.
Yeah. Do you still do the prediction spreadsheet?
No. Okay. I haven't done that in a while.
Yeah.
That one's good too, though.
Well, that's this, but codified.
Yeah.
So the prediction spreadsheet is before something happens, you predict how much joy do I think this will give me, and then as it's happening, not after, because after you go, how much joy am I experiencing? And you notice, wow, I hang out with this one person all the time, and I always think it's going to be a 9, and it's always a 5.
Yeah.
And then you see another friend once a week, and you go, wow, I thought this was going to be a 6, and it's an 8. This person is much funnier, but for some reason, because of our history, I don't update my software on that. And it will help you to hang out with the right people or to do the right activities. Henry, your brother, basketball for him, he loves it.
Yeah.
He didn't play it for the first 6 months he got here. And now he plays it 3 times a week. It's just a very helpful exercise for moving towards the things that actually make you happy.
For sure. Okay, what's the question?
The question is that Well, Flavio's basically asking that when you guys talk on the podcast, that you guys are easily able to come up with your points, and it seems very spontaneous, and you kind of know exactly what you're saying. They have trouble with their sort of brain to mouth connection. They don't know what it is that they're trying to say until after they leave a conversation, and they just want to know what tips you have to, in the moment, be able to recall upon their thoughts and opinions.
Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah. I find it's really helpful. I don't listen to anything you're saying. And the entire time you're talking, I'm just thinking, what am I going to say? And I find that's really helpful.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. Because really, when you're talking, that's just time for me.
That's meaningless for you.
To be thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
No, what do I do? How do I actually think of things? I don't know. What do you think?
I know that there's a couple things that I've done in my life because I witness people like Russell Brand, who I look up to at a stratosphere of
what a gangster.
Incredible spontaneous articulation that is beyond anything I've ever done in my entire life. And one thing that helps is watching him. It's weird. When I do these breakdowns and I immerse myself in a person for a week, I start cracking jokes like them. I start talking like them. I adopt their cadence. And that's just within a few days.
Yep.
So what I would say is pick someone. It could be Russell Brand, who you really like the way they speak, and watch. It could be a few minutes a day, and I'm not kidding. Less than 10 every day would probably do it early before an interaction. That primes you to do that in your first interaction. And now that you're primed, now you're practicing what you just did every single day, even if it's only in the first interaction of that day. So that was, I remember I did Chris Pratt. I was so much funnier for like 6 days.
Oh, we all remember.
We all remember.
So good.
And that would be one thing, is to watch and just absorb, copy people that you admire.
There's another thing that I know I do that I just watched you do as well, which is it's not actually don't listen when they're speaking. It's buy yourself time to think. So a lot of times we pause when we're speaking, and that is to let our brains catch up to some extent. And I think a lot of people, they feel a pressure to not pause because they think it'll either create an awkward pause or they'll get cut off. There's a science to it. I'm sure we could do a video on it, but there's times when you can pause that you know you're going to keep the person's attention. And there's times when you can pause in a way that could be the end of what you're saying. And so the goal, I actually had made a video about how to not get talked over that might have this, but the goal would be to pause when it's obvious you have more to say, but that will buy you time, I think, to have your brain catch up.
Yeah.
And I just saw you do it while you're talking, and I know that I do that too.
So what's interesting is, because I do think when you talk, for part of the time, because we're on a podcast, and I definitely think more when I'm talking to you here than I do when we're talking downstairs.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I need to be more articulate. And when I think while you're talking here, there's words in my head. I can hear them. But when I'm speaking, there's no words in my head. It's blank. And even when I pause, there's not, oh, what am I going to say? Because when there's an oh, what am I going to say? That's when I'm on stage and I am boned and they're, oh God, crash and burn. So interestingly enough, I think relaxation and meditation is going to be huge, because I'm not thinking as these words are coming out of my mouth at all. No sound in my head. When you talk, that's when I do the heavy lifting synthesis. But now this is off the cuff.
Yeah. And then that goes to any social confidence exercise that we've talked about before. It can be helpful in terms of...
We have a couple on Simple Habit, right? We're no longer working with them, but we have, I put a couple on simplehabit.com. You can get a free week trial. I think it's simplehabit.com/charisma. We're no longer working with them, but I did some meditations to gear yourself up before you go out, if you want to listen to some of those.
Yeah, and if you go to that link, then they'll know what they're missing out on.
Yeah, show them.
It wasn't personal. I followed up. I was like, hey, I'm just curious. Is it because we weren't performing well? And they said their strategy is different. I think they're early stage apps. They were going users, and now they're going money. But they can't not just canceled all influencer marketing, they canceled all paid marketing. Wow. Which I think is interesting. And they'll probably start it back up.
Sure.
But I just thought that was interesting.
So that's a huge piece. And really, even more important than all of it is just watch someone that you like for 10 minutes a day. That's how I practiced. And then I actually did it for a period of time. I was remembering the Russell Brand Donald Trump video that I did. I talk about how Donald Trump uses really small words and Russell Brand uses larger words, and when there's opportunities for both. And I would practice, I remember, for that whole week being in a conversation going, I'm going to Trump this one, and just only use 1 or 2 syllable words for an entire conversation. Excellent practice.
Isn't that almost always the better way to go?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love Russell Brand, and I think he's very impressive, but in communication, it's almost always better.
It's particularly when you're on camera and you have a massive audience. When you're on stage at a debate, then you want to use smaller words. But if you're speaking to someone, the time for larger words is when you know your audience and you know that they can handle larger words and you can be more precise with larger words and you sound smarter, which is huge.
Yeah, but you know what? I had a friend growing up who was the king of using really, really long words.
Yeah, but he used them inappropriately. I know who you're talking about.
No, he didn't. But it just made him sound pretentious.
So there's certain words that hit that when you say usage instead of use, right? Because they're dead. One's 2 syllables, one's 1. There's no difference. But I'm thinking of the person that you are talking about. I feel like he used words that
JB?
Yeah.
I think he was pretty good.
Okay.
I think he was pretty good.
I'd have to go back and double check.
It's not his real name, guys. Spoiler. I protected his anonymity.
I protected his anonymity.
All right. Next question.
This is the last one. I'm not sure if you guys will have anything to say about it, but it interested me. Gage asks, what is your guys' opinion on the quote-unquote red pill movement? Do you think it is beneficial to society?
So the red pill movement...
That's a good question.
You know what's funny? Everyone co-ops... I gotta go now. Everyone co-ops the red pill. It's every marketer's thing because you want this. You get to associate it with Keanu and the Matrix.
Oh, the Matrix. Yeah.
You go. Do you want to be a loser and take the blue pill and stay in the past, or the red pill and move into this new paradigm?
By the way, in Matrix, I'm taking the blue pill. I'm staying in the Matrix. Seriously, I've thought about it. I used to be out of the Matrix.
You're just into another level of simulation.
That sucks. That totally sucks. You're eating gruel. I'm up here eating my binary code for steak.
Yeah.
I don't even feel guilty because it's binary steak.
And my life has a purpose. I'm a battery. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, who are you helping?
Now I'm just a gruel-eating robot fighter.
You know what's funny? If it weren't such a dark, thunderstorm-filled overworld and the pods were like in a bright place and the robots had happy faces, you could be like, aren't we kind of doing a good deed? We destroyed the world in our war with them, and now at least they get to survive off of our body heat while they give us an incredible existence. The best we could have. They tried to give us a better one.
By the way, if we have a truce and we pull everyone from the Matrix, we just live in Zion underground because we ruined the world.
But it has this romantic...
Anyway, yes.
It has this romantic connotation. But the red pill is...
That's not what this person means when they say red pill.
As I understand it, it is... the movement of men, and I don't even know what the unifying thing...
Should I Google it?
Yeah, see if you can get the unifying thing. It's how... I guess the red pill is that you, as a man, are not told the truth of male-female intersexual dynamics.
Ooh, wait, hold on. This is... I love Wikipedia for this.
Sure.
The red pill, together with its opposite, the blue pill, is a popular cultural meme, a metaphor representing a choice between a life of harsh knowledge, desperate freedom, and the brutal truths of reality.
Now, does this relate to...
Yeah.
With regard to, I think, intersexual dynamics.
Yes.
In this case.
And the blue pill represents a life of security, tranquil happiness, and blissful ignorance as to the harsh realities of life. So that's what it references.
So, yeah.
The red pill thinks they have the harsh, brutal truth of dating.
Yes. And I think that... I've read a ton of stuff on the red pill.
I have not.
I find it fascinating. Now, my critique of it is going to be too specific because you have to have the understanding. So I guess I kind of have to talk a bit about it.
Yeah. Assume that people don't know what it is.
Okay. So I will try to represent their beliefs as best I can.
Okay, but say they.
They,
so
not
we can't
me.
have this clipped up into a disaster.
Yes. I believe that their belief is that there is a harsh truth about how women and men operate. And their belief is that women are opportunistic lovers who give one set of rules to one type of guys who they call alpha men and one set of rules to another type of guys who they call beta males. And for the alpha males, they are more accommodating sexually. They're more likely to break the rule that they have. I don't have sex on the first date. All of a sudden, you find out. And for the beta males, they're more likely to try to engage in a long-term relationship that man provides emotional and exchanges, quite frankly, emotional and financial security. And in many cases, there's an exchange of security, which I think this is the part that they don't often recognize, is you're signing up for this, right? But these men are often upset because they find out, for instance, that their wife, who wouldn't sleep with them to the third date and is not very sexually...
Yeah, maybe has no interest in sleeping with them now. They're married and they have sex twice a month.
Yes, and then they find a sex tape from when she was 22 in college.
And she had a threesome.
And it's
crazy, and it's something that they've expressed interest in.
Yep.
And the wife has no interest in doing with them. It's very upsetting to them because they go, why that guy and not me?
And so it's a movement of understanding based upon several different types of experiences that men have, which is in having one version of women and the woman that they are with or married, and then being confronted with that idealization being shattered. And I do think that men and women can take the red pill in terms of you're going to find and marry someone that completes you and loves you in the way that you've been waiting your whole life, and now you found the one. I think we all need to take the red pill with regard to that and go, that is a fantasy. It is not going to happen. There is no mommy or daddy waiting to save you.
But that's gender. That's both genders. That's everyone. You're just saying that there's that Disney ending of we'll never fight.
Yes.
We'll always be happy. They will complete me.
Yes.
They will take care of me in all the ways that I desire, and they'll read my mind whenever I need them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not happening.
And because this person is with me, I have a monopoly on their sexual affection, their love, their etc. Their desire. And that is, again, not true. I think people lie to one another, men and women. You're the only one I've had eyes for. I knew from the moment I saw you. We all participate in this. And that's not been my experience.
You can have faithful behavior, by the way, and still have desirous thoughts.
Of course.
I mean, that's what being human is, I think.
But most people do not want to hear from their partner that I right now am more interested in that man or that woman sexually than I am in you. And if all the rules were off the table, I would go do that. And tonight, I'm just not feeling it with you. And that crushes people because we've been promised and told that love means that they want me and only me forever,
every day forever,
in this way. So this is a tough question to answer because I feel like I have to I wish you could perhaps maybe next week ask me about some particular red pill beliefs, because it is such a
I know, I mean, you've told me
it's such a broad spanning movement.
Your view is that the part that they miss is that all humans, it's not gender specific, all humans enter into relationships with certain desires and things that they want to get out of those relationships. And that can differ relationship to relationship. And that's just what having a relationship is, whether it's sexual or friendship or whatever. Yeah. That's your high level take, is my understanding. And so this idea that women are conniving and evil while men are magnanimous. It's like, if you think women are conniving and evil, men are conniving and evil.
We're all just trying to maximize.
If you think what you're doing is magnanimous but self-interested, then what your partner is doing is probably magnanimous but self-interested. Like your behaviors, you're all motivated by the same self-interest / generous, compassionate / shitty parts of being human.
Yeah, bottom line up front is I don't think that there's a moral distinction between men and women where we go, women are bad, men are good. That I think is an undercurrent, or women are deceptive, men are not. Again, it's absurd. Like, I don't buy that at all. And those will be the arguments. Women lie, men don't do this, men are loyal, which is like, which men have you been hanging out with, dude?
But your argument isn't that they're wrong. Why? Again,
some women lie, some men lie.
Exactly. It's not that you're not saying that everyone's a paragon of virtue. You're actually saying that everybody is, all the genders are unfaithful, and everybody in the right circumstance is probably going to be unfaithful. And
now let me say where I do think they have a fair point that I think is worth doing. They accurately say that our biological evolutionary history creates particular psychology in us. So the biology of a man is an infinite, pretty much ever reloading stream of semen.
Yep.
You can get anyone pregnant, and you can verify this in your own life. And the biology of a woman is that once a month you drop an egg a certain number of times until you hit menopause. So I could go to any culture.
And then if you get pregnant, you're pretty physically vulnerable.
You're very vulnerable. So I go to any culture in the world, and you can see how this breaks down in gay couples. And you ask, who is going to be more sexually reserved, or not reserved, it's granting less access sexually. And it's going to be the person who stands to get pregnant and have that child.
Most of the time. Yeah, and obviously there's some women that are very...
Because there's a greater cost. They need to be choosy with that. And again, with all of this, all of these rules are broken on an individual level all the time.
Some men are very chaste and some women
are
not.
There are gay men. There are gay women.
There are straight guys. There are religious guys who don't have sex till marriage. There are women who they have sex before marriage.
Yes.
You're just saying that it tends to be the stereotype of the culture, and that stereotype tends to come from the majority of behavior.
Yes. And so they accurately say that, okay, a woman's sexual strategy is going to be a product of her biology. And her biology says that she has a phase where she is ovulating, and a phase where she is not. And it also says that she has two primary needs, which she needs. She needs to get the best son, daughter, genetic, healthy that she can possibly do, which, by the way, we all do. We all filter for health in our spouse.
Yeah.
That's everybody. We all want that. And because they have this vulnerable experience of pregnancy, they need someone who will stick around, take care, and provide for this very, very vulnerable child, which comes out way too early compared to every other mammal, right? Mm-hmm. Baby giraffes hit the ground and are up and walking. Infants can't do anything for years. So, and then the issue comes where women, I think, most of the time, ideally would like both of those to be the same man. She would like to pick a guy who is healthy, strong, what we typically consider attractive, so that her offspring have the best genes. And by the way, men do the same thing. They pick women who have all of those same qualities that they perceive as healthy, fit, young, whatever, going to be a good mother biologically. The problem comes when that guy does not want to then be the guy who sticks around and is the father and hangs out forever.
When birth control totally changed the game, right?
And birth control changes the game. So what these men find is that their wives, their girlfriends have a sexual past which is with one type of guy, and they treat him in the bedroom with a sexually liberal way. And then they settle down with another type of guy who does not inspire the same desire.
This isn't all guys.
Them.
Sometimes they marry someone that really jacks them up in the bedroom.
Of course. And it happens all the time. But these particular men often have experiences like this.
The people that are upset.
And they're angry about it. They feel cheated, tricked, deceived, promised that they could get something that they do not have.
This does happen both ways, by the way. There are wives who feel very sexually unfulfilled, and they wish that they could have sex every day, and their husbands are the ones that are disinterested.
Totally. And so that's, I think, I would love someone to represent a belief, but our criticism has been laced throughout, which is, yes, men and women are different. Yes, men and women have generally different sexual strategies. Yes.
But a lot of our complaints...
You could imagine
go to all sides.
Shoe could be on the other foot.
Yeah.
And what, men aren't looking for healthy people that are going to give them the best future, that are going to do this. Like, we're all just trying to satisfy our needs.
Dude, a lot of men, even and myself included, to some extent, they want a relationship that's going to be to the end of days. You know, one of the criticisms of the red pill is that you know, they say that women are looking for someone that they can take advantage of by having that person stick around to take care of them throughout life, financially or whatever it might be. A lot of men want the same thing from their wives, which is someone that's going to stick around forever through sickness and in health, and help them when their times are tough, or make whatever it is. So I think it's...
Well, you have to ask yourself, why is this, you know, these men feel cheated many times. And there's no individual...
That's what I'm saying. They're weirdly enough, I think the red pill has some insights into relationship dynamics, but everything goes through their lens, and a lot of their lenses are hurt and sad or angry. You know what I'm saying? And not all of them. And a lot of what they teach can still have merit.
And could I imagine to be in this other position, or do I see the other side of what it would be to be a woman searching for a man?
No, it's a lot of times it's a guy who does get cheated on or whatever it is, and then finds the red pill, and it lines up with their life experience, and it helps explain to them what happened, by the way, in a way where they don't have to really necessarily blame themselves for not being the guy that she wants to have the threesome with, and instead they can go like, oh, women.
Yeah, so I actually really think a lot of the specific claims are fascinating. We've talked about the general stuff a lot. If you have particular questions about those claims, I'd love to talk about them.
Yeah, it's probably better to talk specifics,
because it's talking about any movement
there's a lot
group
in the
of people who feel differently, and I'm sure some are going to feel that I've miscategorized them, and I probably have, because I'm talking about this amorphous thing.
Sure, if there's a million people in the movement.
It's like, ask me how I feel about Republicans or Democrats. Or like, it just doesn't make any sense. So if you have a particular...
Or even the Republican platform. Good luck.
If you have any particular questions about a red pill belief that you would suggest, please ask me. But what I'll say at a high level is that I do think, if I had to give the general good and the general bad, there tends to be a very self-interested, cannot imagine the other side, and does not see that there's intersexual traitorousness, cheating, deception, and exploitation occurring everywhere all the time. And I do not think that you can point to one gender and go, they do it more or worse. But they accurately say that, look, there's been this weird Disneyification that is setting people up for heartache.
Yeah.
Where you think that you're going to get your Princess Jasmine or your whatever it is who's going to love you till the end of days if you put that ring on her finger. And that's not the case for women or men at all. And I think take the red pill in terms of learning about the truths of human psychology and what drives people, and how you are not guaranteed a happily forever after just because you do the things that every song and movie tells you need to do.
That's a valuable lesson.
Because you'll have your heart shattered a lot of the time if that's the case. And quite frankly, you will have culture to blame, but also yourself if you're wise at the end of that. So yeah, ask us a specific question. I would love to talk more about it.
Hello.
Hey, what's up? This is Charlie.
Hey, nice to talk to you guys.
Hey, can you hear me? What is your name? I haven't actually gotten it from my podcast producer.
It's Devin.
Devin, thank you so much for making yourself available.
Hey, you got me here as well, just so if you hear a second voice chiming in, you're not like, what is happening?
Awesome. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you for hopping on.
How you guys doing?
We're excellent. We're shooting a podcast. I saw you had a fairly long thing, but I mean, I'll let you sort of set it up. I haven't said anything about it, so let us know what you wanted to chat about.
Okay. Well, first off, I want to thank you guys for your awesome podcasts. I think that they've been really diverse in their topics and very stimulating intellectually.
That's awesome.
Our pleasure, man.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's intellectually stimulating. I appreciate that.
So, I guess these are kind of fundamental questions, but I think they're important to establish before we continue on. Mm-hmm. So, do you guys believe that there are moral codes that are either incorrect, incomplete, or maybe even inherently bad?
So, I don't know if we want to both answer separately. What I would say is that I guess you could describe me best as a relativist, which is to say I certainly behave and believe in my own person-to-person behavior. I say, don't do that, do that, but I don't think that there is a divine objective reasoning why anything like donating to the poor is better than murdering someone, as far as on the scale of the universe or that sort of thing.
Right. What about you, Ben?
Define moral code.
What's that?
Can you define moral? The question was, do you think there are moral codes that are better or worse, right? So I'm just asking you, what is a moral code in that question?
Well, I think it's kind of certain rules that you have in your own life that you value, that something that you think that are important in a person's life that they should follow, and it's something that is kind of a path that one should walk, I guess.
Yeah. I'll go with yes. I'm going to say I believe that people shouldn't randomly murder and rape their way through the world and should instead be kind to strangers.
Yeah. And I agree with Ben on the personal level. I would just, on the philosophical level, I would say I cannot find an independent justification for
You don't
that.
think it's because of the divine? Mine's kind of the golden rule.
Sure. But we'll proceed and see where we go. So what else?
Okay. Well, could you all kind of just define what you mean by moral relativism real quick, too?
What do I mean by moral relativism? I mean that moral codes presuppose the foundation upon which they are built, which is to say that is something good or bad is a human concern that necessitates a human perspective, which when we talk about universality, you could also take the perspective of the couch that Ben sits upon. And what would be good for that couch would certainly not be the ending of the genocide in Darfur. Like every assessment of whether something is good or bad is relative to a particular being. And to say that something is universally good does not, to me, make sense, because you would need to define to what subject that thing is good or bad.
Okay. Awesome. So then, do you guys think that people knowingly break their own moral codes, something that no one else has told them, like, you did something wrong? They did something that goes against their own beliefs internally.
Sure, yeah, I've done it. Not proud of it, but...
Well, I think that's a complicated question. Honestly, I think it's a great question, but I think that what we define ourselves by is often the thoughts in our head and the things that we say. But clearly, something drove you to do that thing that wasn't the thoughts in your head and wasn't the words that you say. It was this subconscious urge to do whatever you did. So do we act opposite our stated beliefs? All the time. Do we act opposite our conscious desires? All the time. Do we act opposite our subconscious drives? I'm not certain that we ever do.
Well, no, that's who the subconscious drives who drives the boat.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm thinking like it's not moral, but my purported value is courage and bravery and all
Sure.
that. But then certainly there are times where fear will win out.
Yes, and your subconscious mind is getting exactly what it wants.
Yeah, that's the subconscious mind is too
Right.
It's going, I'm not going to talk to that person or do
Yeah,
that
so my
thing.
I don't know if it's a moral code, but my code could be, to always face your fears and always push your comfort zones. But then there are certainly times where I'm too scared or too uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. I just try to minimize them.
Right.
Not perfect.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that.
Hold on, we're losing you. Can you hear us?
Oh, here he is.
You just split for a second.
Well, there's what's that?
Sorry, you were interrupted for a second, but
yeah, the connection might.
We're back now.
Okay, so you can hear me right now?
Yes.
Okay, so there's this guy that I found on YouTube, and he debates religion with various different speakers, and his name is Ravi Zacharias, and I think that he put this very succinctly when he said that if you believe that there is a moral law, so in other words, a moral code, something that is universal for mankind, then you have to also believe that there was a moral lawgiver that made that moral code. And I think the conclusion that you've reached, Charlie, that that morals are relative to the person or to this cultural or era, I think that's a conclusion that you reach when there is no God. So, and there's kind of two options there. So either one, all morals are an illusion that men have created for themselves, and what's the opinion of one man over another? Or a divine being has laid this law, and it's something that is universal and applies to all. And because he laid the law for man to not kill innocent, to not shed innocent blood, that is why it is wrong to do so. And I think even if we can debate which one is correct all day long, but I think that this really, it shows what Jordan Peterson was talking about. You mentioned that you didn't understand what he was explaining, how despite that so many people say they're atheists, they act like they're Christian. And basically what he was saying was exactly that. Sometimes we say that there's no God and morals are relative, or there is a God and morals are not relative, but our law is predicated on the idea that God has made murder, theft, slander, things like that. He has said that these things are wrong. It's wrong to be deceitful. It's wrong to commit adultery. It's wrong to do all these things. So we have laws, for the most part, that go along with the Judeo-Christian values that Christians believe are given to us by God. And so that's why, also, when you were talking about natural rights, why that doesn't necessarily make sense to you is because you are looking at it with your experience, which, of course, is understandable. But our founding fathers, when they referred to natural rights, they were referring to the fact that they believed that there is a creator and that he has given us these rights. And they don't exist because man says they exist. They're merely just the sounding board that's declaring that they exist. They are merely finding them or defending them. But God is the one that's given these rights to us. So we have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so I think that that's something that is basically what Jordan Peterson was explaining, is that despite what we say all the time, well, I guess some people, not everyone, but people that are atheists, they say all the time that they don't believe there's a God. The fact that you believe that there are moral codes that are better than others, or that we should defend people's rights, as like Sam Harris talks about, you kind of go against yourself if you also claim that there is no God.
Got it. So there's a lot in there, and there's some that I agree with, and there's some that I don't agree with. I know that Ben had a reaction, so I'm going to let you go ahead first. And quite frankly, there's a ton to talk to.
Yeah. I'm more just a hole poker when it comes to arguments than anything else. But I think three things. I think the definition of moral code changed halfway through that, from being a personal thing to being a universal law. At one point, you had said that our laws mirror the Bible, and that means that our laws come from God. But I think the Bible, certainly adultery is not illegal, and adultery is frowned on in the Bible. And also rape is, I think, penalized more.
The first commandment from God is not enshrined in law, which is, thou shalt have no gods before me. And certainly, I would argue that most people do. And it's definitely not on the books.
So I would say our laws sometimes mirror laws that come from the Bible, but sometimes they don't. And so I'm not sure if they
I understand that.
come from the Bible or they come from man. And similarly, even if our founding fathers were inspired by the Bible, if you don't believe the Bible was written by God, then those founding fathers would be making laws inspired by other men. So I think that's just a couple of things that I find unconvincing. Mm-hmm. I think it's a really nice, thoughtful thing that you said, but those are the things where I go, that doesn't really clear my critical thinking.
Mm-hmm. I think that I think that what you did, you basically raised the question that Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson debated for probably 6 hours, which is how do we get to one moral system being better universally than another without something that stands above any particular individual? And Sam Harris goes, we can use our reason. And a lot of philosophers over history have gone, we can use our reason. And quite frankly, I agree with you in that I remain unconvinced by that. I think that that reason does not provide a platform on which to elevate one moral code over another, or at least I have not seen an argument that I find compelling in that case, which is why I'm a relativist. So I think, but as Ben sort of alluded to say that there is no divine commandment does not say that one could not be an existentialist and create one's own values, which one recognizes are not innately better, but do serve purposes that are important to me, like creating less suffering in the world, making someone smile, right? Like those are basic.
Well, human laws come from a variety of things, none of which I think are divine. Our human laws come from our history and some sort of weird democratic process that put them into being, and other countries are dictatorships where one person decides the laws, and I think that all the laws could be man-made. The Bible could be man-made, and that doesn't mean that it's not full of wise parts. It doesn't mean that there aren't good overlaps.
Well, I actually have a question that I think is, so I presume that you are a believer. Is that the case? You have a religious background?
Yes.
Got it.
Yes, I do.
And so I think this is not to say that there's any problem with this, but I would bet that you did not arrive at your religious belief after hearing these arguments from this particular person. I would bet that you arrived at your religious belief prior to having this explanatory background for it, which I would say is the foundation of religion, which is that it's a leap of faith in that regard, and that it whether or not it is logically backed is almost not the point. You're supposed to, and this isn't to denigrate it at all. I mean, this is to say that that's the leap, is that whether or not the rationality and reason lines up with it is an afterthought. Is that a fair characterization, or do you disagree?
I do think that logic is less of a tool to judge what is truth in religion. It's more, I think, especially. So I'm actually a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and so my beliefs are different from other Christian religions as well, like Catholic or just pick any denomination.
Sure.
So let me see. I believe that Sorry, what was your question again? I already forgot it.
How did you come to your beliefs? I do not think you arrived at them logically, which is not a denigration of your beliefs. It's to say that the logical argument you give, that's for an atheist, right? That's to convince someone who doesn't have faith, who doesn't believe. But your beliefs, they started from a presupposition that the Book of Mormon, I believe, is true. That was where it started. And then you went, what evidence can I get that supports this? And that's totally okay, right? I mean, you were a Mormon before you were a logician.
Before you saw the YouTube video.
Before you were a logician, right? Before you could put together a syllogism, you believed this. I presume you were going to church and you were part of the community, correct?
Yes. But there's a difference between just going to church and actually believing it.
Sure.
There's lots of people that they go, and they're looking for something, but they don't know exactly what they believe necessarily. And sometimes that's what I was going to say, was that we believe that it's by taking the action that we can know whether it's true.
Mm-hmm.
So God has given us commandments to not kill, to not steal, or to give to others, to give service, to love your neighbor. And it's in doing the commandments that you can gain a testimony that it's true. Because in a way, it might not be as important to determine whether there is a God as it is important to actually determine whether the commandments are beneficial to you. So it's like, practice this word and see what happens, and then you can know of yourself if it's true.
Yeah.
Or at least if you find it to be true.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
I think that we are a little different in that sense. Because I'm not very familiar with some of the other Christian denominations, but that's why I wanted to bring that up. Is like, we have a very distinct belief about that. So the law of tithing, the best way to know if it's true is to pay your tithing and to see if you have noticed any benefits from it. Has there been anything that you have received in return, a peace, anything like that?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you have, you know that it's true. You know that it's good. And so in a way, you are correct that there's not so much of a logic to it. It's more of an emotional kind of thing,
mm-hmm.
but it takes experience. It requires doing it. And that's the leap of faith is, are you willing to give it a shot, knowing out front nothing about what it will do for you?
Sure. And I would actually even say, again, not good nor bad, but this is a bit of science, right? We've got some experimenting going on here, right? Give this a try,
in a way.
Measure the results, see how they play in your life. And I'm all about that. I think that many things in life, perhaps with the exception of heroin, and I'm sure we could probably come up with a couple, are worth experimenting with just to give a try. And I think a lot of personal development is, see what happens when you take responsibility for some of your life.
Right.
Just see if things get a little bit better. And that's fantastic. What that doesn't necessarily connect to for me is that while all of that advice could work, certainly it can exist in Scientology and does. It can exist in Hinduism, and you can have different explanations for how those rules came to be that are varying different, are completely different, mutually exclusive, yet the rules work. And I do believe, and this is where I am sure we can agree, that religion, LDS, whatever it is, a large majority of the rules that they set create a cohesive community and, in some cases, a fulfilling spiritual life. I wouldn't say in every case, but in some cases.
True of many religions.
Yeah, true of many religions. Now, that does not mean that, in my opinion, that Mormonism would be more true than Hinduism, would be more true than Catholicism, just because a cohesive community does not a deity make. Do you understand the distinction there? And that's not to say, I think this is where I would probably, again, both agree, is that if you're logicking someone into belief in God, that's almost like Pascal's wager in that they're just betting on it, right? Part of what informs belief is that there is faith and that there's a lack of sufficient scientific evidence to back it up, but we do it anyway because that is a testament to our faith, which this creator seems to want. So I don't get on board with the explanation of a creator God doing it, but I do see tremendous value in giving back to the community in the form of tithing and assembling on one day of the week to all be together and to put something higher than our own petty interests. I think that there's a ton of value in what religion has done over history.
Sure, and caveat is I haven't read the particular book for your religion, so I can't stand by everything that it says.
Yeah, and I would
because
probably
there may be things that I actually think are detrimental.
I'm sure there are. There would probably be a lot, right? There were crusades as well, and there's parts of Mormonism. I know a little bit about the founding of it that I would say that doesn't pass the sniff test for me in terms of I find that a credible. This definitely happened in the founding. But,
I was just saying that just because it's good to tithe and it's good to be kind to your neighbor, all of that can be great advice. I'm just saying I haven't read your particular book, so I can't stand by all of it.
Sure.
And
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
There's a lot of books that I think a lot of religious texts have some good advice and some advice that I don't think should be applied to today.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. I think I also feel that way.
Well, and that's what I was going to say too. I think that just as there are moral codes, and this is of course my personal opinion, just as there are moral codes that are, I think, are better than others or more perfect than others, there are some religions that are better than others as well. And I think that of what I've been able to find in other religions, I see this religion as being the most beneficial and the most good. And of course, I think that's something that every person has to find on their own.
Yeah, I think that most people feel that way about the religion that they are born into. I think that most people find that they come to that conclusion, and it tends to correlate with the geography of their birth. That's not unique to your religion. I think a lot of Islamic, Jewish, Hindu people would also say they look at other religions and see that there's value, but that theirs is
the best,
the superior religion.
Yeah, and I can see that being the case, but I can at least speak for myself when I say that that hasn't been the case for me, because even though, when I was younger, that was definitely the case, because I didn't necessarily understand as much as I do now, and I didn't have as much life experiences to apply my knowledge to. But now I look back and I've actually had many instances where I've questioned whether or not this is true. It's not something that I just blindly follow. And it's something that you have to search. You have to keep looking for. Is this really true? Was I wrong earlier? Did I make a mistake? Is this still true? And at least for myself, that's something that I've been doing, especially recently, because I'm going to be going on a mission for 2 years preaching to people in the Philippines the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I mean, that's a huge commitment.
Yeah.
And so I definitely wanted to know, I mean, if I'm going to make this commitment, I need to make sure, I need to know that this is going to be worthwhile, not just going to be a waste of 2 years of my life. Or
totally.
If there's no God, it'd be a waste, you know?
Yeah. And I think there's strong psychological reasons
given that setup, there's a lot of incentive for you to find encouraging belief evidence.
So, and this is not, again, I have no interest, truly none, in changing anyone's mind at all. I don't, this is what is, I think that a lot of people all around the world question their faith, and they question it. And just zooming out, pretending that I'm a Martian and I'm looking at Earth, and I want to know who's going to be a Mormon. I don't ask who has asked the hardest questions. I don't say, who has really explored all the books. I say, who lives in Utah? And if I want to know who's going to be Muslim, I don't say who's questioned the books the most. I say, who lives in and around Egypt and the Middle East, Indonesia, for instance. And I would say that the determining factor in people's religions is not the depth of their questioning, because when we look at the world, they carve up into neat little geographies, which doesn't correspond. I don't believe that the deepest questioning people are located in any particular state or country. What I see determining people's faith is their community, and that's fine by me. I have no problem with that. But I don't believe. I think that many Muslims, Hindus, and Jews would describe the same journey that you're going on of, I had to really look at my faith and see, and
I questioned it deeply.
And I questioned it deeply, and I came to the conclusion that it is true, and that's based on my life experience, which is, this is then where I run into a problem, is better than the life experience of you Mormons in Utah, or you Hindus in India, or you Jews in Israel.
Yeah.
That's where I bump up against it.
Versus if they are all communities that believe books that came from humans.
Well, no, listen, I'm not interested.
No, I'm just saying that then none has to be superior to the other.
Sure, that's my take. And again, if you but
no religion has to be wrong unless you believe one of the religions.
But
and then all the other religions have to be wrong.
Here's two things that we floated back and forth between the entire time. There's a universality and there's a personal. And we all agree repeatedly that the personal can be pretty much whatever you want. Try to be a good person. And where we might be disagreeing right now is what is universally applicable. So I think if you're excited about your mission and you want to do it, fantastic. I'm in full support of that. But in terms of the universality of going, this is then therefore better, that is where I would put my hand on and say, I disagree. And we're not going to come to a conclusion here. I don't expect to change anybody's mind.
No, but I do want to say, I respect your courage.
Yeah.
This is a difficult conversation, which you knew was probably going to have people who had different opinions on, and you still had us give you a call.
Yeah,
so
I appreciate
for that,
it.
I do respect the guts that takes.
This has been really fun.
Yeah, thank you for calling in. This has
Very
been
interesting to be able to discuss.
Go ahead. There's a bit of a delay. I want to hear what you have to say, though.
Could you repeat that?
I was just saying that this has been really interesting to be able to discuss this with you, and it's a topic that I'm definitely passionate about. To be able to discuss this with people that have alternate viewpoints is definitely a huge experience for me.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna get a lot of it in the Philippines. I wish you the best of luck out
definitely.
there. And thank you again for calling in. I appreciate it. This has been our first more discussion. I don't even want to say debate, but it's been. I really appreciate you sort of setting the stage for us to do more of this. So thank you, Devin.
For people with different opinions to call in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you too, Ben, Charlie.
Take care, man.
And Angel.
Yeah, and Angel.
Thank you. Hi.
Okay, thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Take care.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
All right, what we got now?
Now back to our regularly scheduled program.
Regularly scheduled programming. Yeah, it's interesting. We learned about Mormonism, and I did a religious studies class, and a lot of the stuff, I mean, the Book of Mormon is made in jest about it. It's fascinating, man. It's fascinating to talk to people with different things, and I just have to remind myself of my own beliefs, which is, it's relative, man. Like, you're not better than him. You don't have a claim on the truth. Like, I disagree with, I think, his perspective.
Yeah, that's what we said. No, and I think my thing, I'm not saying people shouldn't believe in religion.
Mm-hmm.
My only thought is, if you do, you should just respect that other people believe in different religions for the same reason that you do, which is they were born into a family that believed that religion, that introduced it to them, and the culture, and it has lessons that are good, and they, to say that yours is better and others is wrong, that's the only part where I'm like,
he believes. Now, this is the issue.
Well, of course, I'm just saying you're looking at a mirror. It's like a yin yang or whatever you want to call it. Like, they're standing here believing their religion, and you're here believing yours.
Yeah.
And you have the same reasoning for both. You were born into it. It makes sense. You questioned it. The laws that you follow, the ones that you pick from the book to follow, make you feel good. And so yours is right. And he's just over there thinking the exact same thoughts.
Yeah.
But he thinks his is right and yours is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing I take from that is, like, just don't tell other people that theirs is wrong.
Well, here's the problem. This is the personal universal. We all go libertarian. Oh, everybody can do what they want. Everybody can have their own bubble of reality. Everybody can live free. But we have to coexist. Mm-hmm. And what if one person's religion says spread it by sword, right? And another person's religion said freedom of speech. You're not allowed to say X, Y, Z words. And we have to. We don't have to. We can just kill each other. But we need some sort of governing thing, and that law needs to be, if not universally philosophically sound, universally applicable, right? Sure. So we have to have these inalienable things, and then you get the founding fathers telling us what our inalienable natural rights are in an attempt to ground them in something more than just we say so.
Yeah, there was a couple of us in a room, and we think we should all do this.
And I think they made some pretty good ones and it's relative to your goal. If your goal is to create a theocracy, those were terrible ideas. You shouldn't have done that. Mm-hmm. If your goal is to create the type of society that we have today, which is capitalist with the relatively free exchange of ideas and fairly maximized individual liberty, but I certainly can't punch or do whatever I want, then they've done it. But I guess I have similar aims in mind as the founding fathers, which is why I subscribe to the Bill of Rights, mostly, I think. But I don't think that they're grounded in anything that is superior.
Just because a law is good doesn't mean it's divine.
Yes. Or is universal, or was arrived at through pure reason, or any sort of... Everyone's trying to say that this way of doing things, you should be able to get there. But I think almost the very fact that these different pockets geographically, it can be so diverse, almost points to the fact that we're not all getting to the same place. These are community building ideas that serve whatever the goal of the community builder was. Yeah. And that could be theocracy, it could be anything. So
juicy stuff. I'm very curious to see what the audience thinks of this
juicy
particular conversation.
It's gonna be a long one. Yeah. Is that it?
That's all I have this week.
That's it, dude. That's all. That's the longest podcast. So guys, if you made it here, please leave a rating on Apple iTunes. It means a lot to people picking this up. If you are not subscribed, please do that.
And if you made it this far, you're a legend. God bless you.
We need shirts that say, I don't know, die a legend or something. It's like, if you made it to the end of these podcasts, it's going to be the end of your day.
You're a legend. Absolute legend. Just a true hero.
All right, guys. Take care. Have a wonderful week.
Thanks for watching.
Talk to you soon.
Or listening.
Peace.